Get out. You're confused. Derek Hastings doesn't even look up from his phone. He stands at the counter in his designer suit, blocking the elderly black man's way. This bank is for people who actually have money, not whatever loose change you're collecting. He snaps his fingers near the old man's face. Social Security office is 2 blocks down, Grandpa. The man clutches a worn leather briefcase. His voice stays calm. Sir, I have an account here. I just need to make a withdrawal. An account? Derek's laugh is sharp and cruel. He turns to the security guard. Called backup. I've seen this before. Expired checkbooks, fake IDs. He leans in close, his cologne expensive and suffocating. You don't belong here. Leave before I have you arrested. The marble floor is cold. The air smells like humiliation. The old man doesn't move. Slowly, he places the briefcase on the counter. The sound echoes through the silent bank. Before you call security, Marcus Washington says quietly, you might want to see what's inside. Derek's hand freezes. Have you ever been judged before anyone knew what you held? The Tuesday morning sun cuts through the floor-to-ceiling windows of First National Bank, painting everything in gold that feels more like judgment than warmth. Marcus Washington stands at the premium services counter, his posture straight despite his 83 years. His suit is immaculate, a navy blue that's been pressed with the kind of care that speaks of habit, of routine, of a man who learned long ago that presentation matters when the world is already looking for reasons to dismiss you. The briefcase in his weathered hands is brown leather, cracked at the corners, the brass clasps dulled by decades of use. He'd carried it to his first business meeting in 1965, to his first property closing in 1968, to the birth certificates of his 3 children and the funeral of his wife. It holds more history than the bank's marble walls, though no one here knows that yet. Derek Hastings is 27 minutes late returning from his extended lunch break. He breezes through the brass doors with the confidence of someone who's never been told no, phone pressed to his ear, laughing at something his college buddy just said. His suit is Tom Ford. His watch is Patek Philippe. His attitude is inherited wealth trying to look like earned success. He doesn't notice Marcus at first. Why would he? The old man is patient, still, waiting with the quiet dignity of someone who's had a lifetime of practice. Yeah, the Tesla's sick, Derek says into his phone, sliding behind the counter. Autopilot's insane. I literally slept through half of I-95 yesterday. More laughter. He's still scrolling through his screen when he finally glances up. His smile dies the moment he sees Marcus. Can I help you? The words are automatic, but the tone isn't helpful. It's the voice you'd use for someone who wandered into the wrong building. Dismissive. Already bothered. Yes, sir. I need to make a withdrawal from my account. I called ahead yesterday to ensure the amount would be... Hold on. Derek raises one finger, turning back to his phone. Bro, let me call you back. Yeah. Some situation. He ends the call with a theatrical sigh, pocketing his phone, like he's doing Marcus an enormous favor by acknowledging his existence. He doesn't notice ask for an account number, doesn't pull up the computer system, doesn't reach for paperwork. Instead, he looks Marcus up and down with the kind of assessment that reduces a human being to a category. Old, black, worn briefcase, outdated suit. Conclusion: not worth his time. Sir, I think you might be confused about where you are. Derek's smile is patronizing, the kind that doesn't reach his eyes. This is First National Bank, premium services. We handle private wealth management, estate portfolios, corporate accounts. He gestures vaguely at the marble and brass around them, like it explains everything. The regular branch is across town. They can help you with, basic checking accounts, Social Security deposits, that kind of thing. Behind Marcus, a woman in a business suit glances up from her phone. A couple waiting for their mortgage appointment exchanges looks. The security guard,
James, a 40-something veteran who's worked here for 6 years, shifts uncomfortably by the door. Marcus doesn't flinch. He's heard variations of this his entire life. "I appreciate the information," he says evenly, "but I'm in the right place. My account is here. Has been since 1964. If you could just look up Marcus Washington?" 1964. Derek laughs, and it's a cruel sound, sharp-edged and performative. He wants the other customers to hear it, wants them to be in on the joke. "Sir, with all due respect, this bank wasn't even called First National back then. We rebranded in '89, so unless you've got some magical time-traveling account—" He trails off, shaking his head like he's dealing with a confused child. The facts are wrong. The bank has been First National since 1932, but Derek doesn't know that, because Derek doesn't need to know history. He only needs to know quarterly reports and his sales commission percentage. The name changed, yes, but the institution remained. The charter, the account numbers, the client relationships. "Okay, stop." Derek holds up both hands. His patience, already thin, is gone. "I don't have time for this. I've got actual clients coming in, important appointments. So here's what's gonna happen. You're going to take your briefcase and whatever expired checkbook or savings bond you found in your attic, and you're gonna—" "I need to withdraw $850,000. The silence that follows is absolute. Derek blinks. Once. Twice. Then his face splits into a grin that's somehow worse than the dismissiveness. It's mocking, delighted, like Marcus just told the funniest joke he'd heard all week. 850,000. He repeats it slowly, savoring each word. Dollars. "In certified checks," Marcus continues calmly, "made out to 3 separate institutions. I have the routing information here." Derek's laughter cuts him off. It echoes through the bank's vaulted ceiling, bouncing off imported Italian marble. Other customers definitely turn now. The tellers at the regular stations pause their work. Even the security guard looks uncomfortable.
"Oh, man. Oh, this is—" Derek wipes his eyes, still chuckling. He leans across the counter, invading Marcus's space, close enough that his cologne, something with too much amber, too much ego, becomes oppressive. "Listen, Grandpa, I don't know what kind of scam you're running, what YouTube video taught you to try this, but it's not happening. Not today. Not in my bank. I'm not running Social Security checks don't cash out at 800 grand. Derek's voice rises, performs for the room. "You know what? I've seen this before. People like you coming in here with fake IDs, stolen account numbers, thinking we're too busy to check, thinking you can just walk in off the street, and I've been a client for 60 years. 60 years. Derek snaps his fingers directly in front of Marcus's face. The sound cracks like a whip. "You know what I think? I think you're confused. I think maybe you saw this place on TV, thought it looked nice, decided to try your luck." He snaps again, closer this time. "But here's the reality check, old-timer. You don't belong here." The words land like stones. Marcus's jaw tightens. The briefcase handle creaks slightly under his grip. But his voice, when he speaks, remains level. "Young man, if you would simply check—" "James?" Derek calls over Marcus's shoulder. The security guard straightens, clearly reluctant. "We need backup here. Possible fraud attempt. Maybe confusion, maybe dementia. I don't know, but I need this gentleman escorted out before I have to call the actual police." "Sir, I don't think—" James starts, but Derek cuts him off. "Are you serious right now? Do your job." The marble floor beneath Marcus's feet is cold even through his polished shoes. The air conditioning hums. Somewhere a phone rings. A printer whirs. Normal sounds of a Tuesday morning at a bank where an 83-year-old man is being publicly humiliated for trying to access his own money. The woman in the business suit has her phone out now, recording. Others might be too.
Marcus Washington has lived through things these people can't imagine. Segregation, violence, doors slammed in his face by people in positions of power who looked remarkably like Derek Hastings. He's been called worse than Grandpa, been threatened with worse than escort from a building he has every right to be in. But something about this moment, the laughter, the snapping fingers, the absolute certainty in Derek's voice that Marcus is nothing, nobody, a problem to be removed, something about it crystallizes every indignity into diamond-hard resolve. Slowly, deliberately, Marcus lifts the briefcase and places it flat on the marble counter. The sound echoes. Every conversation stops. Every eye turns. The bank holds its breath. Derek's smirk falters for just a second, but he recovers quickly. "What's this? Your big evidence? Let me guess. Newspaper clippings? A lottery ticket?" His hand moves toward his phone, ready to call security, ready to end this embarrassing scene. Marcus's fingers rest on the brass clasps. They're warm from his grip, familiar as prayer. "Before you make that call," Marcus says, his voice quiet but carrying through the silent bank like a bell, "you might want to see what's inside." For the first time since this interaction began, Derek Hastings hesitates. His hand, reaching for his phone, freezes in midair. And in that frozen moment, everything is about to change.
The clasps click open with the sound of inevitability. Marcus lifts the lid slowly, deliberately, like a man who's done this 1,000 times but never under these particular circumstances. The leather creaks. Inside, the briefcase is organized with the precision of someone who understands that documentation is survival, that proof is power when the world expects you to have neither. Derek leans forward, his smirk still in place but faltering at the edges. "What, you gonna show me some old photographs? A diploma from—" His voice dies. The first thing Marcus removes is a plastic sleeve containing papers so old the edges have yellowed to amber. But the text is pristine, protected, carefully preserved. He places it on the marble counter with the gentleness of someone handling sacred objects. "Account opening documents," Marcus says quietly. "First National Bank, October 12th, 1964. Initial deposit, $47. His finger traces the signature at the bottom. His own, 60 years younger, the handwriting bolder but unmistakably the same. "I was 23 years old. I'd just come back from Mississippi, from the Freedom Rides." Derek's hand, which had been reaching toward the document, stops midair. Behind them, someone whispers, "Oh my God." The second item is a manila folder, thick with papers. He opens it to reveal property deeds. Not one, not two, 14 separate documents, each stamped, notarized, official. The addresses read like a map of the city's most valuable commercial real estate. Purchased between 1968 and 1992. When nobody else wanted them, when this city was redlining my community and calling these neighborhoods urban blight. He looks up at Derek for the first time since opening the briefcase. "I paid cash for every single one." Derek's face has gone pale. His eyes scan the deeds, and even his limited business education can calculate what these properties are worth now. Millions. Tens of millions. "No," Derek breathes. "You can't." The third layer is stock certificates, the paper kind, from when stocks were still physical things you could hold. Marcus spreads them like playing cards. Microsoft, purchased in 1986. Apple, 1997. Amazon, 1999. Not huge amounts, a few thousand shares each, but enough that if Derek's mental math is working,
He's looking at... This isn't possible, Derek says, but his voice cracks.
My secretary at the post office gave me investment tips, Marcus says, and there's the ghost of a smile now. She had a brother at IBM, said computers were going to change everything. I believed her. A fourth item, letters. Marcus doesn't remove them all, just fans them enough that Derek can see the letterheads. Bank presidents, city mayors, state senators, U.S. representatives, all addressed to Mr. Marcus Washington, with language that's respectful, grateful, congratulatory. Then photographs. Marcus with John Lewis. Marcus at a ribbon-cutting ceremony, shaking hands with the former governor. Marcus receiving an NAACP award. Marcus, younger but still dignified, standing in front of the very building they're in now, back when its marble was new. Wait, someone in the crowd says loudly. A businessman in his 50s, mortgage documents forgotten in his hands. Marcus Washington. The Marcus Washington. The real estate developer? The philanthropist? Derek's mouth opens, closes, opens again. I need to make a withdrawal, Marcus repeats, exactly as he said when he first walked in. $850,000 in certified checks. From my account. He pauses, letting the words settle. My account with a current balance of $2.3 million. James, the security guard, has stepped back from the counter entirely, his face a mixture of horror and disbelief. The woman with the phone is definitely recording. So are 3 other people. Derek Hastings stands frozen, his designer suit suddenly looking like a costume, his confidence shattered like dropped crystal on marble floor. He starts, then stops. Sir, if you had known. Marcus's voice cuts quiet and sharp. So respect is conditional. Dignity depends on account balances. He begins carefully replacing the documents, each one a piece of history, of triumph, of a life lived in defiance of every limitation people like Derek assumed. Mr. Washington, please, this is just a terrible misunderstanding. Marcus closes the briefcase. The clasps click shut with finality. The only misunderstanding is yours.
But Marcus Washington's story doesn't begin at this counter. It begins 61 years earlier, in 1964, when he walked into this same bank for the first time. He was 23 then, rail-thin from months in Mississippi jails, still healing from scars he'd never talk about. The freedom rides had ended, but freedom itself remained theoretical for a young black man with empty pockets and a chest full of righteous anger. His grandfather, a sharecropper who died owning nothing but debts, had made him promise something on his deathbed in 1955. Make our name mean something, boy. Not loud, not flashy, but something that lasts. So Marcus worked. 3 jobs, sometimes 4. Night janitor at the courthouse, dock worker at the warehouse district, security guard on weekends. He slept 4 hours a night and saved every dollar that didn't go to his grandmother's rent or his own survival. By October 1964, 3 months after the Civil Rights Act passed, he had $47. Not enough for anything, really, but enough to walk into First National Bank, the same bank that had turned him away a year earlier with a sign that didn't need to say whites only, because the message was clear in every dismissive glance, and open an account. The teller that day was a middle-aged white woman who processed his deposit with tight lips and gloved hands like his money might contaminate her. But she processed it. The law said she had to.
Marcus noticed something that day, walking through the downtown district after leaving the bank. The city was changing. Urban renewal, they called it. But what it really meant was pushing black families out of neighborhoods that white developers suddenly wanted back. Entire blocks condemned, families displaced, buildings abandoned. Worthless, everyone said. Marcus saw opportunity. He bought his first property in 1968 for $800. A condemned row house nobody wanted. Worked construction during the day to learn the trade, renovated at night by lamplight. Rented it to a black family who'd been pushed out of their previous home. Charged fair rent, saved every penny. Bought another property. Then another. By 1978, he owned an entire warehouse the city had given up on. By 1985, he'd purchased a city block during the recession while everyone else was panicking. By 1992, he'd started a scholarship fund that would eventually put 300 students through college. His secretary at the Postal Service, a woman named Dorothy whose brother worked at IBM, gave him a tip in 1986. "Computers are going to change everything," she said. "There's this company, Microsoft. You should buy some stock." He did. Then Apple. Then Amazon. Not because he understood technology, but because he understood listening to people who did. He never drove a fancy car, never wore expensive watches, never moved out of his modest 3-bedroom house in the neighborhood he'd helped revitalize. When people asked why, he'd say, "Wealth is what you build, not what you show." The bank knew him, of course. The real decision makers, the ones who'd been here long enough to remember. They knew Marcus Washington had turned $47 into an empire built on dignity and deliberate choices. But Derek Hastings was 27. He'd been at First National for 8 months. He knew quarterly reports and sales targets. He didn't know history. And now, standing at the counter with his career crumbling around him, he was learning the most expensive lesson of his life. Respect isn't about what people have. It's about recognizing their humanity before you know their net worth.
The branch manager arrives within 3 minutes. Susan Martinez has worked at First National for 19 years, long enough to know exactly who Marcus Washington is. Her face drains of color the moment she sees him standing at Derek's counter, briefcase closed, expression unreadable. "Mr. Washington?" Her voice is careful, respectful, terrified. "I am so deeply sorry. This is completely unacceptable. Derek will be suspended immediately," Marcus finishes for her. "I know. I've heard this before." He glances at Derek, who's standing frozen, his designer suit suddenly looking like a child's dress-up clothes. Not from this bank specifically, but from institutions that make promises about change and then hire people who've never learned basic human decency. Susan's hands tremble as she reaches for the computer. "Please, let me process your withdrawal personally. Whatever you need, Mr. Washington. $850,000 in certified checks, you said? I can have that ready and I'm not making a withdrawal." The words stop her cold. "I'm closing my accounts. All of them." The silence is absolute. Even the air conditioning seems to stop humming. "Mr. Washington, please, I understand you're upset, but surely we can—" "I've banked here for 60 years, Marcus says quietly. The entire lobby is listening now. Customers, tellers, security, everyone. Through redlining, through loan denials for businesses that are now city landmarks, through being followed by security guards every single visit, even after I'd been a client for 40 years. He pauses, letting the weight of those decades settle. I stayed because I believed institutions could change, that policies would change, that people would change. He looks at Derek, then back at Susan.
But today proved something I should have accepted long ago. The building changed, the policies changed on paper, but the disrespect? His voice hardens just slightly. That's still here, in the assumptions, in the laughter, in the certainty that someone like me doesn't belong in a place like this. Sir, this was one employee you hired, one employee you trained, one employee who felt comfortable enough to publicly humiliate an 83-year-old man because he assumed, correctly, that there would be no consequences. Through the glass doors, Marcus can see his nephew Andre outside with a professional camera. The local news van is pulling up. He'd called them this morning, before he ever walked through these doors. This wasn't about his money. It was about every person who'd been dismissed before anyone knew their worth. Transfer everything to Unity Community Credit Union, Marcus says, sliding a paper with routing numbers across the counter. $2.3 million. I want it done today. Susan's face goes from pale to ashen. Mr. Washington, please. Today. Behind him, 3 customers quietly approach the teller windows and ask to close their accounts.
6 months later, Marcus Washington passed away quietly in his sleep, in the same modest house he'd lived in for 40 years. But his final act at First National Bank became something far bigger than one man's dignity. The video, captured by multiple phones, shared by his nephew, went viral within hours. 43 million views in 3 days. #RespectElders and #BankingWhileBlack trended worldwide. News outlets from CNN to BBC covered the story. Elderly customers across the nation began sharing their own experiences of being dismissed, doubted, disrespected. First National Bank issued a public apology, suspended Derek Hastings permanently, created the Marcus Washington Customer Dignity Initiative, mandatory training for all employees. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. But Marcus's real legacy wasn't the bank's embarrassment. It was the Washington Promise Fund. Before his death, Marcus had transferred his entire $2.3 million fortune into a community trust named after his grandfather, the sharecropper who died owning nothing. The fund now provides scholarships to 50 students annually, business loans to minority entrepreneurs, and housing assistance to families being displaced by gentrification, the same cycle Marcus had fought 60 years ago. Still happening, but now there was something fighting back. At his funeral, the church overflowed. Students he'd educated, business owners he'd funded, families he'd housed. The mayor spoke. Local news covered it. First National Bank sent flowers. They weren't accepted. Marcus's nephew Andre inherited the leather briefcase. Inside, he found a handwritten letter. The briefcase was never about the documents. It was about carrying forward what our ancestors couldn't. You carry it now. Fill it with your own proof, your own dignity, your own legacy. And when someone tries to tell you that you don't belong somewhere, show them what's inside. Andre placed his own documents in the briefcase, his college diploma, his business license, the deed to his first home. The briefcase passed to the next generation. Marcus Washington walked into that bank for the last time, not to prove his worth. He'd done that a lifetime ago. He walked in to prove that dignity cannot be deposited or withdrawn. It can only be demanded. On that Tuesday morning, he made his final withdrawal, not of money, but of respect. The kind you can't bank on, the kind you must earn. Who in your life has been dismissed before anyone knew their worth? Tag someone who needs to hear this story. Share this if you believe respect should never depend on account balances, because Marcus Washington's briefcase is still being carried. The question is, what are you filling yours with? Drop a comment. What would you have done in Marcus's position? Like if this story moved you. Subscribe to never miss stories that matter. Share to remind someone of their worth. Remember, dignity isn't given, it's claimed, one briefcase at a time.